August 17, 1931. 2:47 a.m. Four white men threw Bumpy Johnson off a four-story building in Harlem. His body hit the pavement. They heard bones crack, saw blood pool, watched him stop moving. They walked away laughing. 2 hours later, at 4:52 a.m., those same four men were dead. 17 more would follow by sunrise. And by the time the sun set on August 18th, Harlem had erupted into the most violent 48 hours in its history. This is the true story of how one act of disrespect ignited a war that changed organized crime forever. A war that proved something the mob had forgotten. Respect isn't given, it's taken. And Bumpy Johnson, he didn't just survive that fall. He made sure everyone who doubted him paid in blood. To understand what happened on August 17th, you need to understand Harlem in 1931. The Great Depression had crushed America. Unemployment hit 25%. Banks failed. Families starved. But in Harlem, money was flowing, not from Wall Street, not from legitimate business, from the numbers racket, an illegal lottery where thousands of black residents bet nickels and dimes on three-digit numbers, 0 to 999. Draw happened daily. Winners got paid 600 -1 odds. The numbers game generated $50 million a year. In 1931 dollars. That's nearly $1 billion in today's money. And who controlled it? Black operators. People like Madame Stephanie St. Clair, the numbers queen of Harlem. A French-Caribbean immigrant who built an empire brick by brick. She ran 40 numbers banks across Harlem, employed 200 runners, paid out winnings in cash same day, no questions asked. The community loved her. She hired black workers, funded black businesses, paid rent for families who couldn't afford it. The numbers game wasn't just gambling, it was Harlem's underground economy. But in 1931, white organized crime syndicates started looking north. Dutch Schultz, Mayor Lansky, Lucky Luciano. They saw $50 million a year and wanted their cut. Dutch Schultz led the charge. Born Arthur Flegenheimer in the Bronx, a German Jewish bootlegger who made millions during Prohibition. By 1931, Prohibition was ending. Alcohol would be legal again. Dutch needed a new racket. He chose Harlem's numbers game. Dutch's strategy was simple: show up with guns. Offer black operators two choices: work for him at $200 a week or get buried. Most took the $200. They'd been making thousands, but a bullet to the head isn't negotiable. Madame St. Clair refused. She didn't just refuse, she declared war. And she hired 26-year-old Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson to protect her operations. But Bumpy wasn't just muscle. 3 years earlier, he'd done something that made even hardened criminals nervous. Bumpy Johnson, born October 31, 1905, in Charleston, South Carolina, moved to Harlem at age 10 after his older brother Willie was accused of killing a white man. His parents sent him north to avoid a lynch mob. Harlem didn't welcome him. Kids mocked his thick Southern accent, called him country, tried to bully him. Bumpy fought back, every single time. By age 15, he was a second-story man, breaking into apartments, stealing whatever wasn't nailed down. By 16, he was running armed robberies. By 17, he'd done his first stint in Elmira Reformatory. By 26, he was Madame St. Clair's chief enforcer. Bumpy had a reputation. Educated, he read Nietzsche, studied philosophy, played chess like a grandmaster. But violent. In 1929, during a restaurant fight, Bumpy slashed a rival enforcer named Ulysses Rowlands 36 times with a straight razor. Rowlands survived but lost an eye. Bumpy calmly ordered spaghetti and meatballs while Rowlands bled on the floor. That's who Madame St. Clair hired to stand between her and Dutch Schultz. But Dutch didn't know who Bumpy was yet, and that ignorance would cost him everything. In August 1931, Dutch made a decision that would change Harlem forever. August 1st, 1931. Dutch Schultz sent 3 emissaries to Harlem: Vinny the Chin Esposito, Lou the Fist Baron, Tommy Ruggiero. They walked into Madame St. Clair's office at 409 Edgecombe Avenue. Top floor apartment, marble floors, crystal chandeliers. St. Clair sat behind a mahogany desk counting money. Bumpy stood behind her, silent, arms crossed. Vinny did the talking. "Mr. Schultz is offering you a very generous deal, Miss St. Clair. $500 a week. You keep running your operations. We take 70% of profits. You stay alive. Everybody wins." St. Clair didn't look up. "Tell Mr. Schultz I built this empire with my own hands. I don't need his protection, and I certainly don't need his permission." Vinny smiled, not a friendly smile. "That's disappointing, because Mr. Schultz doesn't take no for an answer." Bumpy stepped forward. "One step, that's all." Vinny's smile disappeared. "Meeting's over," Bumpy said, voice low, calm. "Walk out now while you still can." The 3 men left. But as they descended the stairs, Lou muttered loud enough for Bumpy to hear, "That uppity NR thinks he's tough." Bumpy heard it. So did St. Clair. She looked at Bumpy. "Let it go." Bumpy nodded, but his jaw tightened. He wouldn't forget. 2 days later, Dutch escalated. August 3rd, 1931. A numbers runner named James "Sweet Jimmy" Parker was collecting bets on Lenox Avenue. 11 o'clock a.m. broad daylight. Jimmy worked for St. Clair had for 5 years, trusted, reliable. A car pulled up. Black Packard, 4 white men inside. They dragged Jimmy into the car, beat him unconscious, drove him to a warehouse in the Bronx. They tied him to a chair, broke 3 of his fingers with a hammer. 1 finger for each number, 000. "Tell your boss," they said, "Dutch Schultz owns Harlem now." They dumped Jimmy back in Harlem at midnight. Broken, bloodied, a message. Bumpy visited Jimmy in the hospital, sat by his bed, didn't say much, just listened as Jimmy described his attackers. Bumpy memorized every detail. Bumpy didn't retaliate immediately. He did something smarter. Bumpy spent the next week gathering intelligence. He sent word through Harlem's underworld, bartenders, prostitutes, cab drivers, doormen, everyone who saw everything but got ignored. He learned Dutch's men frequented 3 spots in Harlem: the Cotton Club for entertainment, Big Joe's Speakeasy for drinking, and Sally's Diner for late-night meals after their collections. Bumpy watched, took notes, learned their routines, their schedules, who drank too much, who got sloppy. This wasn't rage, this was strategy, but Dutch Schultz wasn't patient. And on August 10th, he made a move that crossed a line even the mob wouldn't cross. What happened next shocked even Harlem's most hardened criminals. August 10th, 1931. 9:30 p.m., a firebomb crashed through the window of St. Clair's Numbers Bank on 140th Street. The building erupted in flames. 3 employees were inside. 2 escaped. 1, a 19-year-old runner named Marcus Webb, died in the fire. Marcus wasn't muscle, wasn't a gangster, just a kid from Harlem trying to earn money for his family. When Bumpy arrived at the scene, the fire department was still spraying water. Marcus's mother was on her knees, screaming. Bumpy stood there, silent, watching the smoke rise. Then he turned to his crew, 8 men, loyal, dangerous. "Find them," Bumpy said, "all of them." For the next 6 days, Bumpy hunted, and on August 17th he found them. August 17th, 1931. 1:15 a.m. Bumpy Johnson walked into Sally's Diner on 145th Street and 8th Avenue. 4 men sat in a corner booth: Vinny Esposito, Lou Baron, Tommy Ruggiero, and a 4th, Carlo the Bull Marino. They were celebrating. Dutch had just taken over 3 more numbers banks that week. Harlem was falling into line. Bumpy approached their table, alone, no weapon visible, just a man in a tailored suit. "Gentlemen," Bumpy said. Vinny looked up. Recognition flashed across his face. Then amusement. "Well, well," Vinny said. "The uppity NR you lost, boy. This ain't your side of town." Bumpy smiled. Didn't sit, just stood there. "I came to deliver a message." Lou laughed. "Oh yeah, what message is that?" Bumpy's smile didn't waver. "Madame St. Clair doesn't appreciate her property being burned or her employees being murdered." Carlo stood up. 6'3", 240 pounds. "You got some nerve walking in here alone." Bumpy didn't flinch. "You're right, I do." Tommy reached for his gun. That's when Bumpy moved. One punch, Tommy's nose shattered. Blood sprayed, he collapsed. Carlo swung. Bumpy ducked, drove a knife into Carlo's thigh, not deep, just enough. Vinny and Lou pulled their guns. Bumpy raised his hands. "Relax." But he wasn't surrendering, he was stalling. Because outside, 8 cars had just pulled up. What Dutch's men didn't know, Bumpy never worked alone. 16 men burst through Sally's diner doors. Guns drawn, faces covered. Vinny's eyes widened. "You set us up." Bumpy nodded. "Told you. I came to deliver a message." Shots didn't ring out. Not yet. Instead, Bumpy's men dragged the 4 mobsters outside, threw them into cars, drove north. They ended up at an abandoned warehouse on 155th Street. 4 stories, brick, empty. Bumpy's crew dragged Vinny, Lou, Tommy, and Carlo up the stairs, all the way to the roof. 2:30 a.m. the city was silent. Bumpy stood on the roof with them. The 4 men, bloodied and beaten, were shoved to the edge. Vinny was the first to realize what was happening. "Wait," Vinny said. "Wait, wait, wait." Bumpy looked at him. No emotion. "You burned a building, killed a 19-year-old kid. You think we just let that slide?" Lou tried to bargain. "Dutch will pay. Whatever you want, name the price." Bumpy shook his head. "This ain't about money." Tommy spat blood. "You're dead, NR. Dutch will bury you." Bumpy stepped closer. "Maybe, but you won't be around to see it." He nodded to his men. One by one they were thrown off the roof. Vinny first, then Lou, then Carlo, Tommy last, screaming the whole way down. 4 bodies, 4 floors, 4 thuds. Bumpy looked over the edge, watched them hit the pavement. Then he turned and walked downstairs. But Bumpy made a critical mistake. Someone saw everything. Across the street, hiding in an alley, was a 5th man. Sal the Rat DeLuca. Dutch's informant. He'd been trailing the crew all night. Sal watched the bodies fall, watched Bumpy's men leave. Then he ran straight to a payphone, called Dutch Schultz's headquarters in the Bronx. "Boss," Sal said, breathless. "They just threw Vinny and the others off a building. All 4 are dead." Dutch's voice was cold. "Who?" "Bumpy Johnson." Silence. Then, "Find him, bring him to me, alive." Sal hung up, smiled, because he knew exactly where Bumpy would be. At 2:47 a.m., Dutch's revenge crew found Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy walked back to his apartment on 139th Street, alone. His crew had scattered, protocol after a hit. Lay low. Regroup in 24 hours. But as Bumpy turned the corner onto his block, 4 men stepped out of the shadows. Not Sal. These were Dutch's enforcers, professionals. Mickey the Hammer Doyle, Frank Knuckles Petrone, Eddie the Blade Rossi, and Big Anthony Gallo, 6'5", 280 pounds. Mickey spoke. "Mr. Schultz wants a word." Bumpy stopped, calculated, 4 against 1. No weapon, no backup. "Tell Dutch I'll call him tomorrow." Mickey laughed. That wasn't a request. They rushed him. Bumpy fought, landed 3 solid punches, broke Mickey's jaw, shattered Frank's ribs, but 4-on-1, math doesn't lie. Big Anthony grabbed Bumpy from behind, locked him in a bear hug. Eddie drove a fist into Bumpy's stomach. Once, twice, 3 times, Bumpy's knees buckled. They dragged him toward a building, not his apartment. A condemned tenement across the street, 4 stories, boarded windows. They hauled him up the stairs, all the way to the roof. 2:45 a.m. Mickey lit a cigarette. His jaw was swelling, he could barely talk, but he managed. "You killed 4 of ours. Dutch says we kill you." Bumpy coughed blood. "Dutch ain't here," Eddie laughed. "No, but we are." Frank kicked Bumpy toward the edge. Bumpy stumbled, caught himself. Mickey looked at Big Anthony, nodded. Big Anthony grabbed Bumpy, lifted him like a rag doll, and threw him off the building. 4 stories. Bumpy's body hit the pavement at 2:47 a.m., but what happened next defied every law of survival. Bumpy Johnson fell 40 feet. His back hit a fire escape on the 3rd floor, metal railing. It slowed his fall just enough. Then he tumbled, hit the 2nd floor fire escape, shoulder first. Bone cracked. Finally, he crashed onto a pile of garbage bags stacked in the alley. The building's trash hadn't been collected in weeks. The garbage absorbed some impact. Not all, but some. Bumpy's ribs cracked. His collarbone shattered. His left leg broke in 2 places, but he was alive, unconscious, bleeding, but alive. On the roof, Dutch's men assumed the job was done. Mickey looked over the edge, saw Bumpy's body motionless in the garbage. "He's dead," Mickey said. Frank nodded. "Good, let's go." They left, walked back to their car, drove to the Bronx. Reported to Dutch Schultz. "Johnson's dead, threw him off a building just like he did to ours." Dutch smiled. "Good, now Harlem knows what happens when you cross me." But they didn't check for a pulse, didn't confirm the kill, fatal mistake. At 3:18 a.m., a janitor named Willie Davis found Bumpy in the alley. Willie Davis worked nights at the tenement next door. He was taking out trash when he heard groaning. He looked, saw a man in the garbage, bloodied, broken. Willie recognized him immediately. Everyone in Harlem knew Bumpy Johnson. Willie ran inside, called Dr. Leonard Freeman, one of Harlem's few black doctors. Freeman lived 3 blocks away. Dr. Freeman arrived at 3:35 a.m., examined Bumpy in the alley, checked his pulse. Weak, but there. "Get him to my office," Dr. Freeman said. Now, Willie and 2 neighbors carried Bumpy 6 blocks. Every step was agony, Bumpy's bones grinding, but they made it. Dr. Freeman worked for 2 hours, set the broken bones, stitched the gashes, wrapped the ribs. At 5:47 a.m., Bumpy's eyes opened. He couldn't speak, could barely breathe, but his eyes were open. Dr. Freeman leaned over him. "You fell 4 stories, you're lucky to be alive." Bumpy's jaw tightened. He wasn't lucky, he was angry. By 6 o'clock a.m., word had spread through Harlem. Bumpy Johnson survived. News traveled fast in Harlem. By sunrise, every runner, bartender, numbers banker, and street hustler knew. Dutch Schultz's men threw Bumpy Johnson off a building. He survived, and he was coming for revenge. But Bumpy couldn't move. His body was broken, so he sent a message instead. At 7:15 a.m., Bumpy whispered to Willie Davis, "Find my crew. Tell them to meet at St. Clair's. Tell them it's war." Willie ran. By 8 o'clock a.m., 16 men had gathered at Madame St. Clair's apartment. Bumpy's lieutenants, his enforcers, his soldiers. St. Clair addressed them. Dutch Schultz tried to kill Bumpy. He failed. Now we show him what happens when you come for one of ours. One of the men, a 28-year-old enforcer named Jericho Black Jack Williams, asked, "What's the play?" St. Clair smiled. "Cold. Every single one of Dutch's men in Harlem, all of them, by sundown." Black Jack nodded. "Consider it done." Retention hook. At 9 o'clock a.m., the war began. First target, Big Joe's Speakeasy on 142nd Street. 3 of Dutch's collectors were inside, drinking, unaware. Black Jack and 4 men walked in, guns drawn. The collectors reached for their weapons. Too slow, 3 shots, 3 bodies. Black Jack left a note on the bar. "Bumpy Johnson says hello." Second target, the Cotton Club. Two of Dutch's enforcers were meeting with the club's owner, trying to muscle in on the liquor supply. Bumpy's crew ambushed them in the parking lot. 10:45 am, two more bodies. Third target, a warehouse on 155th Street where Dutch stored bootleg liquor. Bumpy's crew firebombed it. The explosion rocked Harlem, flames visible for miles. $200,000 worth of alcohol destroyed. By noon, Dutch Schultz got the message. Dutch was in his Bronx office when the phone rang. His underboss, Abe the Snake Landau, delivered the news. "Boss, we've lost 5 men in Harlem this morning. They hit Big Joe's, the Cotton Club, and they torched the warehouse." Dutch's face turned red. "Who?" "Bumpy Johnson's crew." Dutch slammed his fist on the desk. "Johnson's dead." Mickey confirmed it. Abe hesitated. "Apparently not. Word on the street is he survived, and now he's declared war." Dutch stood, paced, rage building. "Fine," Dutch said. "He wants war. I'll give him war. Send everyone. Every gun we have. I want Harlem burned to the ground. I want Bumpy Johnson's head on a stick." Abe nodded. "How many men?" Dutch's voice was ice. "All of them." At 2:00 p.m., Dutch Schultz sent 40 armed men into Harlem. It was an invasion. 40 men, Thompson submachine guns, shotguns, pistols. They came in waves divided into 4 groups. Each group had orders: find Bumpy's crew, kill on sight, but Harlem was ready. Bumpy's network was vast, informants everywhere. By 2:15 p.m., every corner, every rooftop, every alley had eyes. Dutch's men didn't know the neighborhood. They were outsiders. And in Harlem, outsiders were targets. What followed was the bloodiest day in Harlem's history. 2:47 p.m. Lenox Avenue and 140th Street. First clash. 8 of Dutch's men encountered 12 of Bumpy's crew. Shots erupted. Middle of the afternoon. Pedestrians screamed, dove for cover. When the smoke cleared, 4 of Dutch's men dead, 2 of Bumpy's wounded. 3:22 p.m. a tenement rooftop on 135th Street. Bumpy's snipers, positioned hours earlier, picked off 3 of Dutch's enforcers as they exited a car. Clean shots, professional. 4:10 p.m. an ambush in an alley behind the Apollo Theater. 6 of Dutch's men walked into a trap. Bumpy's crew surrounded them. No escape. 6 more bodies. By 5:00 p.m. Dutch's invasion had turned into a massacre. Of the 40 men Dutch sent, 17 were dead. 9 were wounded. The rest retreated. Harlem belonged to Bumpy Johnson. At 6:30 p.m. Dutch Schultz made a phone call. Dutch called Madame St. Clair directly. His voice was controlled, barely. "You've made your point." St. Clair's response was calm. "Have I? This war ends now," Dutch said, "or I burn Harlem to ashes." St. Clair laughed, soft. "You tried that, didn't work. Your men are dead, Dutch. Go back to the Bronx. Stay there." Silence. Then Dutch spoke. "This isn't over, St." Clair hung up. But the war wasn't over. Not yet, because at 8:00 p.m. something unexpected happened. August 18, 1931, 8:15 p.m. Lucky Luciano, head of the Italian Mafia's New York operations, called Dutch Schultz. "Dutch," Lucky said, "we need to talk." Dutch was furious. "Not now, Lucky." "Yes, now." They met at a warehouse in Lower Manhattan. Neutral ground. Lucky didn't waste time. "You're starting a war you can't win." Dutch glared. "Bumpy Johnson killed 4 of my men, threw them off a building. I'm supposed to just let that slide." Lucky shook his head. "You escalated first. Burned their building, killed a kid. And now you've lost 17 men in one day. One day, Dutch. You know what that does to our reputation." Dutch said nothing. Lucky continued. "Harlem is black, always has been, always will be. You can't control it with fear. Bumpy Johnson has the community. They'll fight for him, die for him. How many of your men will die for you?" Dutch clenched his jaw. "So what do you suggest?" Lucky leaned forward. Make peace, cut a deal. Let them run their own operations. Take a percentage. Everybody wins. Dutch wanted to argue, but he knew Lucky was right. He'd lost. On August 20th, Dutch Schultz agreed to a sit-down. The meeting happened at a restaurant in Midtown. Neutral ground, Dutch Schultz, Lucky Luciano, Madame St. Clair, and against Dr. Freeman's orders, Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy walked in on crutches, ribs wrapped, arm in a sling, but he walked in. Dutch stared at him. "You're supposed to be dead." Bumpy smiled, slow, disappointed. Dutch didn't respond. Lucky brokered the deal. Harlem's numbers operators could remain independent, but they'd pay a 10% tribute to Dutch's organization. A tax, not a takeover. Madame St. Clair agreed, 10%, not a penny more. Dutch nodded, reluctant, but he nodded. The war was over. But the legend had just begun. Over the next 35 years, Bumpy Johnson ruled Harlem. Not through fear, through respect. He never forgot what happened on August 17, 1931. The night he fell 4 stories and survived, and neither did Harlem. 3 months later, something strange happened to Dutch Schultz's 4 men, the ones who threw Bumpy off the building. Mickey, the Hammer Doyle, found dead in the Bronx. November 12, 1931, shot twice in the head. Frank Knuckles Petron, found in the Hudson River. December 3, 1931, drowned. Eddie the Blade Rossi, stabbed 23 times in an alley. January 8, 1932. Big Anthony Gallo, disappeared. February 1932. Body never found. The police investigated, found no witnesses, no evidence, no suspects, but everyone in Harlem knew. Bumpy Johnson kept receipts. So what does this story teach us? 3 lessons. First, respect is currency. Bumpy Johnson didn't survive by being the toughest. He survived by earning respect. From Madame St. Clair, from the Harlem community, from his enemies. When Dutch's men threw him off that building, they weren't just trying to kill him. They were trying to humiliate him, send a message, but Bumpy sent one back. Louder. Second, intelligence beats brute force. Dutch Schultz had more men, more guns, more money, but Bumpy had something Dutch didn't: the neighborhood, the people, the knowledge. Bumpy knew every alley, every rooftop, every informant. Dutch's men were outsiders, and outsiders always lose. Third, survival is the ultimate revenge. Bumpy fell 4 stories, should have died, but he didn't, and his survival became legend. For the next 37 years, Bumpy Johnson ruled Harlem, not because he was invincible, but because he proved something more important: you can't kill respect. This story was buried for decades. Why? Because it didn't fit the narrative. A black man standing up to the white mob, winning, building an empire that lasted generations. But the truth doesn't disappear. It waits. Bumpy Johnson understood something most people never learn. Power isn't about who hits hardest. It's about who gets back up. If this story moved you, subscribe for more untold history. Next video: how Bumpy Johnson escaped from Alcatraz's most dangerous gang war. Comment below, what would you have done if you were Dutch Schultz?